Hush. Let's talk about it. So I've been meaning to catch this movie for a while. It's a Netflix-produced film. It's been out for a couple months now, I think, and it's been getting strong reviews, especially for a horror film. And I'm going to do this review a little bit differently. I'm going to start off talking about the story, then I'm going to talk about the characters, and then I'm going to talk about the execution of everything behind the camera and in post-production. Then I'll kind of wrap things up at the end and give a score. So this movie is really a straightforward home invasion film with a little bit of a twist. It's more of a gimmick, actually, than a twist. And this gimmick is that the victim in the house is deaf. And that makes for a pretty interesting curveball, especially for the director and everybody else behind the camera and the people in the editing room. They get to make some really cool scares and cut it in a really interesting way to make the scares really effective. However, it doesn't add anything to the story. It is truly the most basic home invasion film. There's really not much else going on with the story. However, I'll go into a little bit more detail with the characters. We have this character named Maddie, and she's a pretty successful writer, I believe. She has a friend come check up on her, see how she's doing while she's writing her next book. She's going through a breakup, I think. There's a bunch of stuff kind of going on in the background that they present to us, but it's really inconsequential. It doesn't really matter, so I won't get into the specifics. And after Maddie's friend departs, and you can read into that however you want, this guy with a mask shows up and has the intention of murdering her, but then he realizes that she's deaf, so then he's kind of toying with her, and I don't really know what to make of it. In fact, that's probably one of my first problems I had with this, is I don't really understand the motivation of this killer. And I wouldn't have a problem with that if this killer remained masked, but within 15 minutes of him showing up, he takes his mask off, he shows his face, and I'm not spoiling anything because it doesn't really matter, but he doesn't put the mask on for the rest of the time, so we get kind of intimate with this guy, and because of that, I want to know his motivation. If he was just Michael Myers, I don't need to know Michael's motivation. He's just a force of nature. But when you take the mask off this guy, now I am feeling a connection with him. I'm closer to him. It's more intimate. It's more personal. I want to know what his motivation is at this point. But at the end of the day, I'm just left thinking, I guess he's just a killer, just a generic killer. He just wants to kill people. And that's kind of lame. It just felt like a missed opportunity to delve deeper into this character, especially because he's being played by John Gallagher Jr., who's a really talented actor from 10 Cloverfield Lane, if you saw that movie. He's extremely talented. I really thought that they could have given him something to really chew on. And to that point, if we go back to Maddie for a second, I really didn't think that she had a very well-developed character arc. We see that she's struggling with her book at the beginning of the movie and trying to end it, and that she has this ex-boyfriend that, she's struggling to come to terms with that. A couple other things I think that really just don't come to fruition at all, like her boyfriend's name is Craig. Craig Skypes her once, and that's it. No more Craig. And I totally forgot that she was a writer until like the last 10 minutes of the movie, where that kind of pops up again, as well as the fact that she has this voice in her head that she mentions in the beginning of the film as well. I think it's like her mom's voice that, just like anyone has that voice in the back of your head, and that doesn't come into play until, again, the last 10, maybe 15 minutes of the movie. These are things that were brought up in the beginning of the film that are completely forgotten during the second act, and then they just kind of pop up in the last, the third act of the film. And it just, because of that, there's no development in the second act of the film. There's nothing there that makes me go, oh, I see where she started in the beginning of the film and where she ends up at the end of the film. And with regards to the end of the film, first of all, toward the beginning of the movie, they completely telegraph what things are going to help her fight the bad guy at the end of the film. It's just so clear as morning light. Secondly, the way the movie ends, I won't say exactly what happens, but it just kind of ends. That's it. It's over. And again, going back to the whole lack of character arc, I don't understand where we're left off at the end of the movie and what it all means. It just kind of ends. Boom. Done. And I didn't get a sense of what the consequences of all this might be. And like I hinted at earlier, the second act drags a little bit, especially in terms of the storyline. There are some cool interactions between Maddie and the killer. However, because I don't understand her development, his motivations, all that personal stuff that they kind of build up really ends up not meaning anything to me, because I don't understand where this all goes at the end, and it just doesn't feel like there are many consequences to all this. Now, I know that I come off as if I really didn't like this movie at all. That's not true, though. I actually did enjoy this film. I just thought that the storyline, the narrative, and the character development were particularly weak. That being said, everything else, the direction, cinematography, the music, sound design, all the other stuff that I talked about earlier, is actually really well executed, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. The movie is creepy. It is scary at times. I mean, I never was like terrified, but I was certainly creeped out. The killer, the way that they use him and set him up, really makes for some creepy stuff, the way that he exploits the fact that she's deaf. So much so that as I do this review, I've caught myself turning around to make sure that I'm alone. It did get to me a little bit, I'll be honest. And although those interactions I mentioned earlier between the killer and Maddie really didn't mean anything to me at the end of the day, I certainly did find them amusing, and they were very tension-filled. There's times where Maddie and the killer are staring at each other between a plate of glass, and they're communicating with each other, and it's just so tension-filled. You just don't know what's going to happen. And lastly, this film has a very efficient running time of under an hour and a half, which is perfect for a film like this. But overall, although I did have some problems with the character development and the narrative, I really do feel like there were some missed opportunities there. I actually thought that this was a really fun horror thriller home invasion flick with a really cool curveball attached to it that made it different, and I thought that they really exploited that gimmick really effectively. And I'm going to say that this movie is exactly what it is, a Netflix movie. So I'm going to give Hush a 3.2 out of 5. But that's just what I think, take it or leave it. What do you guys think? Have you seen Hush yet? Let me know down in the comment section what you thought. Let's talk about it. And as usual, thank you so much for watching my review. I really appreciate it. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to my channel so we can do this again soon. I'll check you later.
Check you later. Check you later.
Hey man, get off my case.
Oh man. Chicks don't want to hear that shit.